Hey everyone, I wanted to answer a bunch of questions that I had as far as what is Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin a bubble? The predominant question that I keep getting, or the proclamation that it is. I figured I'd just save myself a lot of typing and see if I can answer these questions in 20 minutes or less and just go through some of the basics and what I think about it for what that's worth. So first of all, what is Bitcoin? Tons of information if you want to read through it on bitcoin.org. Uh, Basically, Bitcoin is an electronic equivalent of a currency. Uh, what you do is download a wallet, and once you have the wallet, you can send Bitcoin to anybody else with a wallet or receive it from anybody else with a wallet. I went ahead and installed my wallet, which is simply going to bitcoin.org to get started. Choose your wallet. I just went with the multi-bit for Windows installer. So that's all that you have to do to begin the process. Once you download it, you get something that looks like this. This is my Bitcoin wallet. I have 0.0002 Bitcoins to my name. I got that by accident. I haven't put any money into my account. I left a comment on somebody's website and they tipped me. The way that this works, that's where my zero point zero 0.02 Bitcoin came from. It's about 25 cents, just so you know, at current market value. All that is required to receive money or Bitcoins is this number here. And you can make as many of these numbers as you want. It just randomly creates them or assigns them to you. And you can take the number or a QR code. And this QR code is just a way that your smartphone can read the same number that's down here. So that's my Bitcoin wallet address. And if I send that to somebody or put it up on the internet, that's all anybody needs to send me Bitcoins. So that was up on a website, and somebody just sent me 2.002 Bitcoins. So I am officially a Bitcoin holder. What I gathered from this experiment is that this is truly awesome. I don't have to go through PayPal. I don't have to use a bank. I don't have to go through. I don't have to know who sent me. I don't know who sent me the money. They don't know who they sent it to. So it is vastly superior to any other payment method. I do a lot of online commerce, and so I'm familiar with various headaches with PayPal and bank wires and all the rest of what's involved. I have no doubt that this will stay. In the worst case scenario, it could be banned in some countries, could be banned in the US because it's seen as disruptive technology, and it is, and the banks might not like it. I suspect that will not happen at this point, but it could. But even if it does, the rest of the world, where there is not very rigid enforcement of financial regulation, they will keep this. There is no doubt in my mind. It just makes life so much easier to transact online. Question being, if I have this 25 cents worth of Bitcoin, okay, great, it's money on the internet, but how do I put that into my pocket as cash if I decide that I need to spend it somewhere in the real world? And there's several ways that can be done, depending on how much you're doing and when you want it and how you want to go about it. But there's several exchanges. This is mountgox.com. It is located in Japan. They take American accounts, I believe, mostly worldwide. They're the largest exchange currently, and that's where most of your heavy traders of Bitcoin are currently residing. The caveats with using this: it takes a couple weeks to get approved for an account, and then you have to wire your cash money to them, and then you can buy the Bitcoins at the prevailing rate, and then they will be housed in your account at Mt. Gox unless you withdraw them back. If you ask them to send you money, if you send Bitcoins or send money by Bitcoins a price goes way up and you want to take a profit, or it goes way down and you want to get out, be advised it can take up to 3 months to get your money back. And also they have know your customer, anti-money laundering, all the rest of that. So there's a procedure. It's not under the radar by any means. And it's a slow process to get cash back to your account. So that's something to consider. And likewise, something to consider that there's probably a million people there right now trying to fund their accounts because of the latest sort of hype around the parabolic price rise, aka the bubble, if it is indeed a bubble. So that's your most liquid, dominant exchange on the market right now. The second exchange, BTCE, I do not like personally because they are in Bulgaria and apparently Russian, perhaps, is the speculation of people who've got their order tickets for the help desk in Russian, and it's too far removed. I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with them. I'm just not going to send a lot of money to Bulgaria to be managed by Russians. It's because I'm an American and there's no recourse that I know of if anything goes wrong with that. So, yeah, biased, but I would take my chances in Japan first. Nonetheless, it's a second exchange and it's a fairly liquid market. The price difference between Mt. Gox, BTC, and the rest of the exchanges really highlight the difficulty of getting in and out of them. They're not very easily transferable from one exchange to another as of yet, but that kind of indicates how early the infrastructure is with all of this too, especially just the locations of the exchanges and the relative obscurity of the whole thing. Were it not such a incredibly functional utility, I'd be much more suspicious than I was. In fact, I was very suspicious when I started to look at all of this, but I see that this is in fact a new medium. This is something that people are going to use, period. And there's just so now it's a question of building out an infrastructure that looks more like what we are familiar with using. And then there's Bitstamp is the third one. Located in Slovenia, they have an office in the UK, and they are much quicker as far as is currently in the turnaround of getting your money out. Still a little bit sketchy on that side of it. So as far as a get it in, get it out, it's not super easy to do. Get it in relatively easy, and I think as far as for my own money, my preferred approach is localbitcoins.com. This is just basically eBay for Bitcoins. You just put in where you are in the world and it will find the nearest buyers and sellers from you. And then you can exercise extreme caution as if you were making a Craigslist or eBay transition. All of the rules apply. Nonetheless, you're dealing with people in your own country that are not in a business that's being building up exponential scale like the exchanges are at the moment. So unless you're dedicating yourself to trading these on the exchanges and you want your money there for strategic purposes, or you're buying for a very long time frame, I think local Bitcoins, even probably just getting started, is probably the best way to go. Is find a reputable person on here and just buy them directly, either meet them in person or arrange a bank transaction that you feel comfortable with. The point being that there is an infrastructure here. There is a liquid market. Once you've got through the initial hoop of cashing dollars for Bitcoins and they're in your wallet, then you are now able to transact online with anybody in the world with a Bitcoin account simply by putting their number in here or by giving them your number over here to send you money. And that's all there is to it. It just comes straight in or goes straight out, and it's deducted from your balance or added to your balance. And that's Bitcoin. That's all there is to it. So the second more pressing question of the moment: is Bitcoin a bubble? Should you stay away from it? Should you jump in and try and catch it before it goes to the moon? Will it go to the moon? Will it go to zero? There's a lot of unknowns in answering that, but this is a chart of the Bitcoin performance. Well, it's history. I just went back to 2011 because it didn't do anything for a very long time. They've decimalized this. It's $1,056 per Bitcoin as of this video. The first run here got up to about $300. And then it dropped all the way back to $100. That was earlier this year, March and April of 2013. It dropped back to $100 after a $300 spike. This is when everybody first started calling it a bubble, because it went from, it was just a couple cents. It was worthless when it started in 2009. And then it gradually acquired some value. And we go from 300 to 100, and now we've gone all the way up to $1,240, and it's backed off here. And so the question becomes, is this it? Was this just a big tulip mania? I am inclined to believe it is not, for a few reasons, but I'll have to ask a few more questions to clarify that. Obviously, the question of valuing something that is completely digital gets a little weird, especially when you're trying to value a currency that's completely digital and not backed by any bank or country. It flies in the face of most of the world as we know it, and that's what makes it so interesting. My view of this, again, is that this is not so much a currency as a medium. It's a new medium of exchange. It's based on the old medium prior to everything going through centralized processing facilities like PayPal or the credit card companies or debit cards, where everything is very much controlled and there's fees involved, and all of it has become sort of burdensome if you try and do global commerce, which all of us who have tried are well aware of that. So what we have is a transition to a medium, and it's a very controlled quantity of Bitcoins that will be using this medium. But it's really, it's not so much the Bitcoins that I think are so compelling, it's the medium itself. And the two are intrinsically linked at this point. So that's going to be the question of what is the value of this medium? How is that value controlled? And to try and answer that and without getting egghead any more than I have to, as far as the computer side of it, I mean, what the hell is a Bitcoin? That's the question. And to put it in layman's terms, it's basically a very hard math problem. It's an algorithm that has to be solved, and this was all put together in advance by design with this intention. They're mined out of the ground, and very much analogous to the process of drilling for oil or mining for gold or silver or platinum or anything that you're pulling out of the ground. They designed this so that it was very easy for the first year. The problems were not very difficult, and then they got intricately more elaborate by a preset system. It was designed to get harder, so that there would be fewer and fewer coins that came out until 21 million are made through this complex problem solving. What that amounts to is this industry has built itself up, which is Bitcoin mining. And this is the latest Bitcoin mining technology. This is just a card that you plug into your very, very expensive computer. The card itself, this one's about $5,000 and about 6 months out from production, maybe. 600 gigahashes is that what that means is it's essentially built on cracking passwords. It's a very similar issue where you just guess. Like one hash is one guess. So you try and guess somebody's password. 600 gigahashes is 600 billion guesses per second. So you've got all of these Bitcoin miners out there who are attempting to get these $1,000 coins out of this really complicated math problem, and they're all competing to do it. And the cost of that is all kept here. Blockchain.info carries all of the information on what is going on in the Bitcoin world, and it gives you all of the internal numbers, which you don't really need to know any of this, except to know that there is a huge infrastructure going on behind this. There's a lot of money going into it. And the reason that there's a lot of money going into it is you can see with the increase of the Bitcoin when it was a few cents, it was worth doing. At $1,000, it's very much worth doing. And we see this same bubble phenomenon in the miners' revenue. The people who got into this relatively early and scaled up their operations and bought the latest technology and are now reaping the benefits. Nonetheless, the coin production is going to gradually get harder and harder. That's all by design. This is the difficulty of solving one of these problems, to get your coins out of the equations. And then once you have them, you can sell them on the open market or hold on to them or whatever you want to do, and trade them as Bitcoins to other people who accept Bitcoins for payment, which is getting more and more by the day. But you can see it just gets sidestepped harder and harder. We are past the halfway point already in production of Bitcoins. There's about total Bitcoins in circulation. This is what has been mined from the program. And again, we have just a pre-designated curve. We're at a little over 12 million of the 21 million that will be produced. So half of the Bitcoins that will ever exist are already owned by other people who got into this early on. And all of this is important only to know that the supply is controlled, and there won't be any more. It's a fairly locked up process. So we have a supply and demand equation, and that's a very important component of the value of money, or the potential value of money. And every chart we have looks like it's going parabolic, meaning hockey stick. So to further ask the question of what does a bubble look like, I've got a few other charts that are worth looking at in that context. This chart looks remarkably similar to the Bitcoin chart. What this is this is the Federal Reserve balances. This is all the money in the United States financial system currently. The way this works, you see this the line down here, always just a little bit above zero, $40 billion. And what this represents is the money in the till at the bank. If you go and withdraw $1,000 from your checking account, this notches down $1,000, and then you go spend that money at the store, and the store puts it in their bank account, and then it notches back up $1,000. So regardless of who has the money, most all of the money goes back to the banking system, because even if you use different banks from the person you're doing business with, the Federal Reserve System is all of the banks, all of the federal banks. So pretty much this was a very stable equation. The money is always in the bank. You just hold on to it for a little bit and then give it to someone who puts it back in a bank, and that's how the economic stability of the banking system arose. Up until 2008, at the very end of 2008, something happened that had never happened before. To give you a scale, this was 9/11. The Federal Reserve injected a lot of cash into the banks, thinking that people would panic and withdraw their cash. So they wanted to shore up the accounts. They have the ability to do that because they're the Federal Reserve. They can just invent money and inject it into the banks, and then the banks have all of a sudden brand new cash. And then if they decide to take the money back out, they can do that too. So that's to scale what's going on as of 2008. That was previously the most epic banking issue that we had. It doesn't really register. So what happened here is a bit mysterious if you don't follow this stuff, but ultimately what it is this is the Troubled Asset Relief Program. the bailout, the Hank Paulson moment for traders. We all remember it. The banks were within 24 hours of implosion. And this was the agreement to give the banks $700 billion, which they did. And then we had the quantitative easing, which was the decision to begin to print more and more money. So this is the banks, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Chase, all of your best friends in the banking community. This is the deal. We just give them all of this money from the Federal Reserve so that this doesn't happen, because this is what actually happened when you look at behind the scenes of 2008 and 2009. We actually went negative. And that was what triggered this whole phenomenon, was that this was all the money in all the tills, in all the vaults, in all the banks in the Federal Reserve System. All of your corner household names. We went through the housing bubble, stayed relatively stable. What they did was they wound up lending more money out than they were ever going to get back, because they made a lot of bad loans. So this went negative early 2008 and proceeded to go more and more negative. And what this is the non-borrowed reserves. That's money excluding what they get directly from the Fed that just prints it and gives it to them. So this is essentially all of your savings account, your checking account, any 401k money, pensions, whatever collectively capital on hand was gone. So what should have happened in a free market economy is all of those household name banks that you're familiar with should have gone out of business. You would have lost all your money. Your insurance company would have gone under. Everything would have ended as we knew it. And so the decision was made that instead of doing that, we're going to recapitalize the banks. And that is what this is. So is this a bubble? And to go to the just total amount, you include the Federal Reserve, and the charts don't look that different. I stopped them both prior to where we are currently. We went from about $60 billion to almost $1.2 trillion just here from 2009 to 2010. If I just bump this chart up, this is where we're at today. You can see quantitative easing 1, quantitative easing 2, quantitative easing 3, which is QE infinity, which is they're going to print money until the cows come home or until somebody stops them. And this is just simply the $85 billion a month that comes in from the Federal Reserve, and they just give it to the banks and swap it out for paper, and it gets shuffled around. And the idea is that eventually they'll have so much money that they'll just have no choice but to loan it to people who will take out the loans and pay them back with interest. And this is the brilliant idea to restart the economy, is we'll just keep giving the banks more and more and more money. So as to the question of a bubble, is this a bubble? That's the United States dollar and the reserves in our system. This is guaranteed to go up at $85 billion per month, because that is how much is resolved through the quantitative easing process. So it will keep that angle of ascent until they announce a taper, which they haven't done. Does it look like Bitcoin? Kind of. And that's really the question at hand. Is we've got the same issue here, and the sort of concerning part, perhaps above that this is dollars, is if you look at the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of China, they would all look the same. In fact, if you just add them all up, I just switch charts. This is the rest of the world, excluding the U.S. Currency asset level. So you've got the same overall parabolic rise, especially from 2009. We're basically going vertical. Again, is this a bubble? And if that's a bubble, then is that a bubble? And is that a bubble? And is that a bubble? So are we being prejudgmental here? Because what we're going to see, probably the answer is yes to all of these. But do we have anywhere to hide? I mean, you can't get out of the U.S. and go to the yen because the yen's devaluing faster than the dollar. It's a supply and demand issue with currencies. The more of it they make, the less it will be worth. It's just if $100 bills blew down the roads, you wouldn't work for them. The more plentiful they are, the less they're worth. And it's true of all currencies, and pretty much all of the major currencies in the world are collectively doing this bubble, if you want to call it that. They may rise infinitely, but if they do, they will continually depreciate themselves, wiping out savings, wiping out pensions, wiping out wage power. You put all of these skews on the economy. And this is just the currency side of it. If we look at the liabilities, this is the credit side of it. This is sort of the conjured money, if you will, that when you go and take a loan out of the bank, they just credit your account X number of dollars. It's not cash in your hand. It's money in your bank account. It tends to stay there because you write checks to other banks. And so, again, it never really actually leaves the banking system. You just are accountable for it now. So that's where the liabilities and equity come in. And again, we have this parabolic spike. We saw it start to fail here prior to the recession. The gray bar is just the recessionary phase of that we're supposedly out of. But we turned around, went straight back up. That's the currency, the money printing, stimulating the economy and trying to drive it in this exponential growth curve that we have been in. So we have a currency bubble. If this shape is all that we need to define a bubble, then the bubble we have. We have a credit bubble, which is continuing to inflate. Currency, credit, the only other component is debt. Do we have a debt bubble? And credit and debt are essentially the same thing. It's just different sides of the ledger. But to take one random debt that we're familiar with, this is the national debt, the federal debt. Again, we have a slightly more gradual curve in the beginning, but then it's accelerated here, and we are projecting more deficits, more debt with no particular solution in sight. So once again, we have an exponential curve going from 1 trillion to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to ultimately 24, 32. So is Bitcoin a bubble? Is the entire global economy a bubble? Because all of these look the same. You can take corporate credit. You can take the S&P 500 for the last 2 years. All of these charts are pretty much the same story. How far can this go before the countervailing pressure comes into the market? Meaning the popping of the worldwide credit slash currency bubble that is being created in the wake of the first implosion of the banking system, which was 2008. The solution here has been to simply create a paper recovery and hope that the real economy follows. The numbers that aren't bubbling, new job creation, personal income, wages, manufacturing jobs, civilians in the labor force, those are not bubbling. Those are in fact declining or stagnating. It's not a linear issue. It's all about paper. So if you're in a system that looks like this, where your currency is being debased at this rate, and it doesn't matter if it's U.S., again, Japan, China, European Union, basically 90% of the world's global economy is in the same boat. They're all playing the same game, which is print as much money as you can, give it all to the banks, hope the banks lend it out to you and I, who will borrow it at interest and pay it back. That's the global scheme. When we go back to Bitcoin, that is not the global scheme. This is 21 million coins. The question of their sovereignty is really a question of math, in that they're fixed at that amount. relatively safe from my non-super genius opinion. The comfort I take is knowing that this thing has been attacked by every hacker on the planet since it started, and it's still functioning, still strong. There's no counterfeiting issues. There's no breaking the system issue. There is a theft issue you have to be very careful of because they've written programs that'll sniff around your computer looking for your wallet and steal them. So you need good protection for that. But that's just a matter of education and also of the technology and the infrastructure building out to make it safer, the same as credit card companies do or anybody else. So I don't see it as a concern, and I do see it as an opportunity. And here is why. Again, there's 21 million coins ever to be made. There's 12 million currently in circulation, so we only have 9 million left that will ever be made. And the rate of production will gradually slope to slower and slower number, or else it will be roughly equivalent, but the amount of money invested in the mining will be larger and more dramatic to offset, meaning more people putting more power into hashing out the solutions will speed it up. So we know how many there are, 12 million. We know how many there's going to be, which is 21 million. We also know who has them. It's just kind of cool side effect of you can't get this about the US dollar or any other currency other than in macro pictures. But this breaks down to actually giving you a bracket. I pulled this off of blockchain.info. They update it regularly. This is from December 2nd, which is this week, a couple days ago. What this is accounts open, but not funded, meaning they're a wallet. My wallet has 0.0002. That is 2 Satoshi or Satoshi. Satoshi Nakamoto was the guy who started this. It's a pseudonym. He doesn't exist. Nobody knows who started it. So, put on your tinfoil hat and run with it. It's I don't really care at this point. It may become an issue down the road for the powers that be to want to really understand who's behind all this, depending on how valuable they get. But this gives you a scale of where we're at. 20,297,000 people have wallets with nothing in them. And I presume these are the people that have filled out their paperwork and sent it to Mt. Gox and BTCE and are clearing AML and know your customer rules and letting their cash clear so that they can trade them. Or they're just looking to see what it is and they'll never do anything with it, or some combination of those two. The one Satoshi, this is me. This is my panhandling venture in my quarter. So I'm in this category now. Is 405,000 people have less than less than one. I guess that's just equal to one. So I'm actually in this category. But that's 18%. 90% of the market has nothing. 90% of Bitcoin users have no Bitcoin. And that's a critical factor at this point. Okay, 18% have one. I have no idea how that came to be, but 35%, so that's me. I'm in the 35% bracket at this point with my quarter. So is this a bubble? If it is a bubble, is it saturated? I can say without a doubt it's not saturated by any measure of any bubble that I have ever been a part of, and I go way back. I rode the .com stocks as I was a broker through the housing bubble, and so I get them. But this has some different dynamics to it. Less than 0.1 Bitcoin, so that's less than $100 at current values. That's 27% of the market. So here we've got almost 60% of the people who actually have active accounts. 60-some percent, almost 70% have less than $100 worth of Bitcoin. Then it scales just like the global economy, just like the U.S. economy. It's your top half of 1%, which are the early adopters, the people that developed this and built the software and bought the mining swag and developed it and improved it. They own 42% of the outstanding Bitcoins. and that's 0.05. It's 1,101 people. It's 1,100 individuals or wallets in any case that own 0.05%, or that own 42%. It's 0.05% of the total active users. So that breaks down to 220,000 people, or 2.2 million people, sorry, are active. And of those, 70% have less than $100 worth. And 90% of the people have not even funded yet. If all of these people fund, meaning the 20 million people, there's not enough coins for all of them to have one coin. There's 21 million, and they're going to be coming on board if they all buy one. 2.2 million are already in the market. So basically, one coin for each of the people that already have an account, and the other 6.8 billion people with access to the internet. Well, there's 6.8 billion smartphone connections. You figure that however you want. Some people have 2 or 3, but a conservative estimate is nearly 3 billion people on the internet. So that's 3,000 million people, and we currently have 20 million people with a wallet and 2.2 million people that own any Bitcoin. And only 9 million that are going to be issued, and currently 1,100 people own about 5 million of the Bitcoin that have already been created. So that creates a float, assuming these guys will hold, and I assume that they will hold even if it goes to zero, because they're uber geeks and they want to take over the world, and they've done a fine job of it as far as the layout and the structure. So I'm just calling these off the market. They're just not going to be available except in very small amounts after they're done with their project here. So you've basically got a float of currently 9 million to come, 5 million off the market. That's 14 million. So it's 7 million that will be divided amongst the 23 million that are already in the market, and the 2.7 billion people that, once they understand this, that all they have to do instead of a PayPal or a bank wire and blah, 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 is just take this and copy it and paste it into a window and then hit send, and it's gone. Or else it's coming back to them from somebody that wants to do business with them that might be on the other side of the world. Everybody's going to want some at some point in time, whether it's $1,000 or $10,000 or $1 makes no difference if you just need it to transact. So there's a built-in demand for the product, even if it's only for an instantaneous transaction. You simply pay the exchange rate, you get your Bitcoin, you send it to whoever needs it, and then they can convert it into their domestic currency. If it's pesos or rupees, then they can do that. This also makes it very easy to donate money. Which is the other. I don't like using Kiva because they charge 40%. I don't stick to that, but very high interest rates on their microloans, and they do good work, but it's still just a very high rate of interest. And I would much rather do this. I would much rather send someone in India money, and then they will go change it to rupees and pay me back whenever, with no interest. And that is simple to do now. Before, it would have been virtually impossible. I'd have to use Cuba. I'd have to use PayPal. Who knows what some poor person in India could even get an account with them. This is done. It's a very simple concept. And useful. One additional thing, as far as you can sort of use this as an email, an encrypted email program, because all of these are encrypted, and you can just put a little note on here. So even if I was sending you 0 and just wanted to send you a note, you just send it, and you've got encrypted email built in, which is more advantageous if you're so inclined to keep your communication somewhat private. And also, that technology in and of itself is revolutionary if you think about it, of what we're used to going through. And whether you want the NSA reading all of your email, I'm not sure that they're not reading this either. I'm just sure that they're reading everything else. So that's the question and answer of, are we in a bubble? if it is a bubble, it's nowhere near done. I mean, that's my conclusion on the issue is the supply and demand. Uh, the supply is so limited, the demand is so potentially huge. The already existing supply or demand is enough to drive it a lot higher. There's also the cryptocurrencies. Overall, Bitcoin's the number one. Litecoin coming back number two. Of course, there are going to be competing issues now that Bitcoin has worked. All of these were just a few pennies or worthless prior to the run up to $1,000 in Bitcoin. A lot of the people who made money in Bitcoin are now buying these, and a lot of people who came in late are now buying these, hoping they'll be the next Bitcoin. I have a pretty good idea now of which ones are worth what. I would suggest you do research on that because some of them have a lot more potential than others. But this medium is here to stay. Whether Bitcoin resumes dominance, maintains dominance, it probably will because the internet is like that. Facebook is dominant, eBay is dominant, Craigslist dominant. In each of their fields, Google search dominant. It's just it's a fat tail sort of world. Most of e-commerce centralizes, but you will likely see an acceleration of gains in some of these competing currencies for a lot of reasons. The fact that we've gone so far so fast is intimidating to get in, and the possibility that they get banned would be difficult to overcome to maintain the prices. So that's a risk. But I see this not necessarily as threatening to the current system, as a lot of people are predicting, saying that they're going to shut them down because they don't want the competition. There is, in theory, no reason that banks could not accept Bitcoin and use them as an exchange for currency in the same way that they will. The Federal Reserve has huge gold vaults beneath the FRB New York, near Manhattan. There's tons and tons of gold that was at one point in time swapped out for fiat currency, for dollars. And the gold lives there and it never really leaves. It gets moved around back and forth, but it's a store of wealth. And if they can find a way to use Bitcoin as an anchor point to build derivatives around and for all of them to get a piece of the action, I don't see any reason that they wouldn't do that. We're stuck with dollars anyways. We have to pay taxes with dollars. It's a coercive market, so it's not going to replace the dollar in any case. And for all that I can get my brain around, I don't see an existential threat to the Federal Reserve or the banking system. I see another mechanism for them to do what they do, which is exploit any sort of financial product for maximum gain. And this is simply a new medium, a new financial product. And if it builds its legitimacy at the rate that it is, meaning all of this infrastructure building out, exchanges, it's entirely realistic to me that they will simply adopt it and bring it into the fold, whether the Bitcoin community wants that or not. It seems highly probable that will be the outcome, because the banks have wanted a one world currency forever as well. And if nothing else, they will watch how this plays out so that they can at some point implement their own. That does not guarantee that Bitcoin won't have any regulatory issues. It no doubt will. But as far as just taking the numbers as they are, is the most staggering component of this, because if you get 1% of the internet community is 270 million people. If they all want one Bitcoin, they can only get less than 1/10 of a Bitcoin each from the total, and it's really a much smaller fraction than that. So as this fixed ratio gets divided out amongst all the people first that have accounts, and then all the people that are coming online to get accounts, and the faster the price moves and the higher it goes, the more people are like that. We swarm, and this will swarm to how high or how far. I have no idea. I won't even venture to put a price on it. I will just say that I don't believe that the $1,200 is going to be the all-time high that we ever see on this currency. I would be very surprised if that were the case. And I think that from a utility point of view, once you use this, you'll want it, and that's that simple. There's not much to buy at the moment, so there's that to overcome. But as of today, a Lamborghini dealership in Newport Beach sold its first Tesla using Bitcoin, took Bitcoin as payment. There are more and more people coming online every day because there's just a bunch of newly minted billionaires and then a speculative angle for anybody who is accepting them now to hold them later. It's a self-fulfilling sort of momentum-driven phenomenon, and because it has this utility, it's not tulips. That's what makes it different. This is something that people are going to want to use. At what price, ultimately, is very hard for me to guess, and so I'm not going to. But I would say that buying some of these, even some of these alternative currencies, doing so cautiously, don't get scammed. There's lots of them out there, but and also holding some Bitcoin, getting ahead of these 20 million people that are inevitably going to own them, and probably 10 times that or 50 times that before the Bitcoin finds its actual level of equilibrium, considering that it is going up against every other currency in the world that is being debased just as fast as the value of Bitcoin is rising. This is production. This is not value. This is how many new dollars and yen and euros are coming into the world currency market through the banks. This is a fixed amount, and it serves the same purpose. So all of a sudden, you're stepping into a very new paradigm of virtual reality. So that's it. I'm Jonah Ford. Any questions, feel free to call me, email, catch me at the bar. Good luck to you.